I had never seen him before, and it turns out he's not even in the African National Congress. He's the leader of the National Freedom Party. His name is Sheikh Imam. And so I asked if he'd come on the show, and he kindly agreed. Your Excellency, thank you for joining us. I saw you give a barnstorming parliamentary performance, trying to lay out the true facts of the Ukraine story. You seem to be getting barracked by one or two of your parliamentary colleagues, but you didn't let that put you off, as I wouldn't have myself. I can say it looked like one of my parliamentary speeches, and I fell in love with you right away and wanted to see you on the show. Tell us what it was you were saying in the Parliament and why some people didn't seem to like it.
Well, first of all, very good evening to you from a beautiful but cold Cape Town, South Africa. Allow me, first of all, to thank you for your role in the liberation of the people of this country. Yes, indeed, you know, everything in the world revolves around politicians. Politicians use an opportunity to garner support, to become popular, and I think this was no different. And I must agree with you that it is indeed disappointing that the role that the Russian Republic and then, of course, the Soviet Union that played in the liberation of us South Africans and the ANC could only go on the mute. I must agree with you. Very little comments were coming, or they decided to take a neutral stance, and I felt it was not enough. Now, you must also agree with me that politicians, political parties, and governments all over the world are to some extent either funded or they are controlled by these superpowers or heroes, as they call themselves. And so South Africa is no different in our politics as well. And that's why I've highlighted the issue of, if you talk about Palestine and many other countries. But if we talk about the issue of what's going on in the Russia-Ukraine one, all we were getting, and again I want to say that the media, the mainstream media worldwide, tells you what they want you to hear. And with the research that I did, I felt, no, I think it is only fair that we get the people to get a better understanding of what is actually going on in the Russian-Ukraine war. And that's why I chose to do what I did. And of course, there was opposition from some political parties. There's no doubt about it. I was expecting that. But that didn't deter me, because I had to do what I had to do. And, and not just only on the issue of the Russian-Ukrainian, like I've alluded to earlier on, but on many issues, we will not agree because, of course, we lack independence, we lack objectivity. And that's what gives rise to what I'm going to say next, that all the chaos in the world, the mayhem that you have, the division, all politicians are the root cause of it.
Well, I think there's quite a lot of people who will agree with that, Sheikh. Let's stick for a moment, though, with the Russia-Ukraine issue. You see, I would have expected the government-controlled SABC to be expressing, if not nightly, then regularly, the kind of skepticism about the world narrative that you were left to do on the floor of the House. I would have expected a far more proactive stance coming out of Pretoria against NATO and its nefarious designs. I would have expected them to call a spade, and they really haven't done it. If they have done it, I didn't hear it, and if I didn't hear it, and I'm listening, then they must have said it very quietly. Why is that?
Let me agree with you. Very little is coming even from SABC or all the media houses in South Africa. And that gives rise to the question that you have an SABC, which is a government media house, forgetting the role that the Russians played in the liberation of the people of this country, knowing very well that the media, even in South Africa, has been captured. And for that reason, you don't get independent or objective reporting. And we would have expected the SABC to do that. But clearly they did not. And they choose not to do that. But again, it simply means that the ANC government in the country has been giving instructions to the extent that they don't want to upset certain people all over the world in certain countries and certain superpowers. And you cannot, I want to say this again, you cannot continue wanting to be neutral, particularly when countries like Russia were there when you needed them most. You cannot do that. Now, we tend to lose our objectivity. It's because we are compromised. And that's the problem that the ANC finds itself in South Africa today.
Tell me, what is the National Freedom Party?
Well, first of all, the National Freedom Party is initially a breakaway from the Inkatha Freedom Party under my former leader, who died in September last year, Zanele Kamagwaza Msibi. I am the parliamentary leader for the National Freedom Party. And, so yes, we are one of 14 parties that are represented in the National Assembly.
So I read in the papers this week that the South African Communist Party, long a mainstay of the ANC, and COSATU, the main trade union federation, are making plans for the next election in anticipation that the ANC will lose the majority in the House. They will fall below 50% for the first time since liberation. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, if you look at the state of the country, the state of the economy currently, and the direction we have been going in the last 28 years, in the interest of the broader community of South Africa, it would be a good thing. I predicted many years ago that the ANC will be in power for 30 years, and I think I'm very close to that. It is very unfortunate that many of us that were part and parcel of the struggle, the vision that many of our leaders had previously is not the vision that the current ANC has. As such, you would find that our state-owned entities or state-owned companies are beyond rehabilitation. The levels, and I know that there's corruption all over the world, there's looting all over the world. We know this. But not in a new democracy like South Africa that's only 28 years old. But more importantly, if you look at the latest Zondo Commission that we've had and what it identified as the root causes, it calls the ANC as accused number one. And the president has admitted that. So, in the interest of the country, it would be better if no political party has an absolute majority, because when you have an absolute majority, you tend to exploit that. And that is what is happening currently. But I want to say this, that all political parties in the country currently, wherever they govern, whether at local, provincial, or national level, have similar challenges on corruption, on looting, poor delivery of services, where you don't get value for money. We've introduced things like BEE. What has South Africa created in the last couple of years? 17,500 Black millionaires and multi-millionaires out of the BEE. Has it benefited the 59 million people? No, it hasn't. So it means we need to go back to the drawing board, look at the policies that we have in place and whether it's worked. If it hasn't worked, it's time to change that. The problem we got is when you're not willing to admit that we've made mistakes so that we can correct them and find solutions. That's the problem we see. Then the bigger problem we got
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yeah, go on.
Right.
Go on.
Okay.
No,
Then
go
the
on.
other problem we got is every political party represented in the National Assembly is at each other's throats. It's not about the South African public. It's not about creating a better quality of life for our people. No. It's about attacking each one in order to score points and garner support and votes. That's what it is about. So what is the ANC doing? The ANC needs to protect its base. First of all political parties only employ people that are aligned or members of their party. That's the first problem you got. So even though the policy says something else, in practice, politicians decide who you employ in all spheres of government. And you only employ those people that are aligned to you. That is why you would see the Zondo Commission also identified one of the root causes of the collapse of the state-owned companies was the ANC Deployment Committee, which the current president, Ramaphosa, was the deputy president and responsible for, and has been appointing people on the boards of many of these state-owned companies that failed us. It's cadre deployment, and all political parties are doing the same thing. Now, political parties believe they can't align themselves or support any successes that you have as far as the ANC is concerned, because that's not going to give them the vote. So all they do is continuously attack the ANC. There has been some success, but very limited. And I've always said this, people don't judge you on what you have done. They judge you on what you could have done and what you have not done. And we could have done a lot more with the resources that we have available in the country. However, we have created, like I said, 17,500 millionaires and multimillionaires in this country currently. We remember that when, after 1994, South Africa was a very unequal society. 28 years later, it's more unequal now than it was then. The levels of poverty are greater now than it was then. So we have not taken advantage of even the infrastructure that existed to our advantage and built on that. I give you a good example. You cannot have economic growth in South Africa if you cannot have energy to supply these businesses and the households. Now, we knew we were going to have a problem. Did you concentrate on that one, on maintenance, and on the other one, to accommodate the growing population, which is growing by almost 1 million people every year? We have not been doing that. Now we find ourselves in a crisis. But what was more important, that when there was a handover from 1994, companies that were benefiting then, George, continue with those 30 and 40-year contracts, evergreen contracts, that's what I call them. They continue benefiting through those contracts up to today at exorbitant prices. So you're not getting value for money. That's the problem you got. So most of your money is not going into delivery of services. Okay? It's going into sustaining yourself, first of all, through your very high public service wage bill in the country and your administration. And this is why I say you don't need a 3-tier government. You need a 2-tier government, a national and a district level. We're now introducing a 4th-tier government, a district level as well.
Okay, well, look, we'll pay far more attention to South Africa in the run-up to the elections. And thank you for your perspective on events. And thank you above all for that great speech you made in Parliament.